This is section 6.2, vocabulary, specifically about lunch and dinner food and things you need to be able to order or prepare your lunch and dinner food. So when you're looking at your notes page, the first thing I want you to notice is that there's not a place for you to write in the words for the headings or for the titles. I'm actually writing them in here on the screen. So for example, right next to l'entrée, there's not an official line there on your page, but you might want to go ahead and kind of fill in what the word means, even though there's not a line there, especially when it comes to l'entrée, because in English, when we talk about your entrée is usually your main dish, but in French, you'll notice the word l'entrée is actually the word for appetizer, and that's because the word entrée literally means enter. It's how you enter the meal. You start your meal with an appetizer. Now, in English, we tend to start meals with things like bread and salad. Now, I say in the United States or in English here, because in French it's a little different, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But first things first, the word for bread is le pain. Notice that it's not pronounced le pain, even though that's what it looks like. And then really easy word for salad is la salade. Now, before I get too far ahead of myself, and while you guys are copying the main dish items here, I want to point out the order of a French meal because it's a little different than an American meal. When a French person sits down to do a full meal, we're talking appetizers, main dishes, desserts, and all that, they do things in a slightly different order than we do here in the United States. Here in the United States, we tend to start with appetizer, maybe a salad. We then get to the main dish. After the main dish, you might have your dessert, and that's pretty much it. In France, they tend to have it in a different order. They start with the appetizer, then they have a main dish, then they do a salad. Salad becomes after the main dish because they believe that vinaigrette dressings and things that have that acidity in them help you digest the food. So whereas we as Americans eat a salad to kind of warm our stomachs up, French people use a salad to help in the digestion of the meat and things that they hate that were heavier there in the main dish. After having a salad, they might pass around fromage, a cheese plate of sorts. It's not that they're just eating hunks of cheese, but maybe a couple cheese and crackers to wind things down. And then finally, the last stage of the meal would be the dessert, or le dessert, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. So just to give you a heads up on that, the order of a French meal is a little bit different than your typical American one. All right, enough on that. Let's get to le plat principal, which you'll notice here means the main dishes, or the principal dishes here. Croque monsieur, I know all it says is a ham and cheese sandwich, but ladies and gentlemen, a croque monsieur is so much more. It's kind of like a hot ham and cheese sandwich, but they sometimes put this really creamy bechamel sauce on top. If you get a croque madame, to play on words there, croque monsieur is the ham and cheese there. If you get a croque madame, they throw a fried egg on top, and it's a lot like the St. Paul sandwich that you can get here in St. Louis. But a croque monsieur is a fancy schmancy hot ham and cheese sandwich. Omelette is an omelet, which is usually pretty easy for people to figure out. What you need to notice is that this is listed in the lunch and dinner vocabulary and not in the breakfast vocabulary. French people consider eggs to be a lunch and dinner item, and egg dishes, such as omelets, are considered to be lunch and dinner items. Same with la quiche. If you've never heard of quiche before, this is going to sound really gross when I first say it. It's kind of like an egg pie. You take a savory crust, like something you would use on a pot pie. You whip some eggs like you would for scrambled eggs, and you can mix in whatever meats or vegetables or cheeses you might want. There's all different flavors of quiche. And then you pour it into the pre-baked pie crust and you bake it in the oven, and the egg fluffs up just like it does when it's scrambled, and it kind of almost makes a pie-like substance because you're going to cut out a slice of the quiche. It's really good. It's a savory dish, and it's, again, a way that French people have eggs for lunch or dinner. Les pâtes are pastas. Notice that it's plural. I don't know why. I guess because you very rarely have just one piece of pasta, so they call it les pâtes. La pizza, which we've known for a long time now. Le poisson. Please notice it's not le poison, and if you've ever seen The Little Mermaid, in The Little Mermaid, the chef sings about loving to cook les poissons because he loves to cook fish. Anyway, le poisson is fish. Le porc. Le poulet, pork and chicken. Pork, obviously, very easy to remember. Poulet, notice that it's not poulette. You don't pronounce the T at the end. Then we come to a couple different sandwiches here. They're all kind of in the same format. You just switch which kind of sandwich it is, and you can combine these in different ways. The sandwich au fromage is a sandwich of cheese, as in a cheese sandwich. Le sandwich au jambon is a sandwich of ham, as in a ham sandwich. And le sandwich au saucisson is a sandwich of sausage or salami. Sometimes you'll see saucisson used as sausage, but it's sausage in the sense of like your summer sausage, your Hickory Farm sausages, the kinds of things that you would slice up and have with cheese and crackers. So in the book, sometimes they label it as salami, sometimes they label it as sausage. I don't want you to picture your Jimmy Dean sausage, though. It's more of a, like I said, a Hillshire Farm kind of sausage. Le steak is the last word here for the main dishes, and of course that means steak. All right, so let's get on to everybody's favorite part, le dessert. We're keeping it kind of short and sweet for now. All they're really listing in this section is la tarte. La tarte is just a pie. You can have a tarte aux bananes for a banana pie. You can have a tarte aux fruits for a general fruit pie. But they're just going to leave la tarte, and that's basically a French version of pie. Don't forget you also know la glace, which is ice cream, and you know chocolat, which is chocolate. So you know a few other desserts, but we're not necessarily listing them here today because they're not new. Le boisson is a drink. So les boissons, the drinks that we have listed here, include le café, which we learned in the last section, le coca, which is basically their word for soda kind of in general. It's taken from Coca-Cola, of course, so they put it as cola here, but the coca is kind of soda, usually a dark colored soda like Coca-Cola in general. And they do have all the same brands that we have here in France as far as soda goes. L'eau minérale is mineral water, but it's just their way of saying that it's going to be a bottled water instead of your traditional kind of tap water thing. And you can get that in the, restaurants as well, but l'eau minérale is going to be mineral water. If you take off the mineral part, then you just have straight up water and l'eau. La grenadine. Now we have grenadine here in the States. It's used as a flavoring syrup in some mixed drinks and things like that. I know it's kind of weird to hear pomegranate syrup. What it is basically is it's kind of like how you would use your snow cone syrups, or if you've heard of those new Mio things where you can squeeze a couple of drops of a flavoring into some water. It's just their version of flavored water. This one happens to have a pomegranate flavor to it, so they take some water and they put some pomegranate flavoring into it. I'd rather use the word flavoring than syrup because I think when we use the word syrup, y'all think of breakfast foods. La limonade is the big thing that needs to be talked about here because it is not lemonade. It's like a Sprite or a lemon soda or a Sierra Mist. It's not lemonade, though. A lot of Americans have found themselves in France ordering a limonade and getting mad at their waiter or waitress when they don't bring them lemonade and they bring them a beverage that's carbonated. Limonade is the word for a lemon soda, a lot like a Sprite or a Sierra Mist. So be careful on that. Le sirop de menthe. When they translate it as water with mint syrup, it's kind of along the same lines as the grenadine. It's the idea that they flavor water, but this is a flavor that we don't typically use here in the United States, and that would be the flavor of mint. This is actually really popular in France, and you'll see a lot of people sitting out of cafes, and when they have a really green-looking drink that looks like mouthwash, it's not mouthwash, it's water that they've added a little bit of mint flavoring to. So sirop de menthe is water with a little bit of mint syrup or flavoring in it. All right, last thing on this page is le plat d'accompagnement. A plat d'accompagnement is the accompanying or side dishes. Again, we're just listing a couple here. Don't forget that you already know les frites, French fries, from earlier in the year. Today we're adding les légumes, which are vegetables, and le riz, which is rice. Notice it's not riz, it's le riz. Finally, we've got a few extras here for you. The extras include the actual word for lunch, which is le déjeuner. I know when you learned breakfast, it was petit déjeuner. It's not because it's a small lunch. It's a totally different meal in and of itself, but they do use the same word again at lunchtime. So déjeuner is lunch. I think we saw that when we learned it in our school chapter because you have déjeuner in the middle of the school day. Le dîner is dinner. Le repas is your meal, so they might talk about whether or not you enjoyed your repas, your meal. The next three are words that you would use in coordination with a steak or a hamburger. Whenever you need to tell how you want your meat cooked, these are the words that are going to help you out. Saignant or saignante, with the E on the end, is if you want whatever that item is prepared rare. The reason why they have the E is if you're asking for a feminine item to be prepared rare, then you need to ask for it with saignante, with the E at the end. À point is if you like your things cooked medium. I like to think of it as it's just on point. It's just right there in the middle, on point. And then bien cuit or bien cuite, are the words for well cooked or well done. So if you want to make sure there's no red in the middle of your steak, those are the words you're going to use. Well, since this notes page was taken in class instead of as homework, I'm not actually going to have you practice it. You'll practice it whenever you come to class, next class, and we'll actually get into this vocab whole hog at that time. For now, thanks for taking the notes and listening, and this video is always available for you online if you need to watch it again or you want to watch it again for practice.